Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and executives are working smarter and more efficiently by implementing AI, automation, and data, and really trying to future-proof their business. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. So let's jump into today's episode. I am joined by Andy Markov from Within. Andy, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you, Brent, for having me. Good to meet you. Good morning.
Yeah. So we're excited. So we're going to jump right in, right? So we always start with the leader's journey. So just talk to us about, kind of your background leading up. You have a really cool background, and kind of tell everybody about that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I started my career in user experience design and software engineering. And so I went through the multiple industries. I actually started working in the design agencies back in late 90s, early 2000s. Great experience, exposes you to multiple different customers, multiple different industries. And so I felt it was a great start to a career because you really get to see different challenges that people and mainly industries have. And then after that, I kept working in software engineering. Experience design was a new field back in early 2000s.
Yeah, I was going to say, no one knew user experience back then.
Exactly. It's a field that kind of evolved from one side from the marketing design, which was already richly populated, and growth of web. And on the other side, they established product design, right? Product design is the design of actual things you can touch, right? But the software design, and took all the way until today, it remains to be a semi-misunderstood field.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of gets its value, but only really good companies implement it well and do it well and monetize it.
Completely
and plan it. In fact, one of probably the greatest stories of that success is Bracken Darrell, the CEO of Logitech. He has really, when he's taken over Logitech, he has created an experience organization that was able to achieve massive results for Logitech, right? And elevate the brand no other way. But anyway, my career, I worked in finance, I worked in an investment bank, building early software for investors, advisors, entrepreneurs. Then I went to work at healthcare sector, and most of my career was spent in consumer electronics. I worked at TiVo, I worked at Netgear, building software, building products.
Blast from the past. We all remember TiVo.
I know. TiVo is a great story.
And they were ahead
it was
of
an
their
amazing
time,
company.
right? Yeah.
They were ahead of their time. They built an absolute kind of a Rolls Royce of a DVR, right? Yeah. And eventually ran into a problem of it being a little bit too expensive for most customers, right? And I think that's where that didn't quite succeed. But it was an amazing company. It still probably was the best DVR in the market.
Oh, absolutely. And it changed how people experience TV. It was unbelievable. Like DVR is one of the greatest invention ever for that, right? And I naturally led into streaming. So yeah, very, very
Any
cool.
business that becomes a verb is probably successful, right?
Yeah.
When people used to say, I'm going to TiVo that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So then what led you to Within?
For years, I always imagined building a business. It's the kind of thing, when you are an entrepreneur, you will probably feel it because you will keep thinking about ideas. You will keep coming up with ideas. Most of them will probably not work, right?
Right.
But that drive, that desire to build a business and to build your own company, it was always there for me, right? And I toyed around with many. I built multiple little design agencies and fields around what I knew how to do. Right? But when I was done working at Netgear, right, it was end of COVID, I left and I thought, this is a good time for me to do something of my own. I was in a position to do that. It was at that time a little bit unclear how COVID would impact it, right? And COVID did impact it. We'll talk about it if that's interesting. But, it felt like a right time. And the idea was very simple. We wanted to create an engineering organization that helped enterprises and startups build software, right? Build software quickly. If you think about it, especially for startups and for many companies, I saw that both at TiVo, I saw that at Netgear, I saw that at Sony, where I also worked as head of design, and PlayStation. Most most roadmaps have more items than engineers on the floor that can engineer it, right?
100% agree with that.
And so the MVPs kind of go like this, right? They get ballooned, and then somebody squeezes them down, and then the MVP becomes very small, and then the team that you have develops it, right? So
Right.
we looked at a very simple premise. How do companies that do have limited budgets, even if you're a company publicly traded, you still have a limited budget to engineer new features. And in this
100%.
world, creating those new features is business, right? Each feature
Yeah.
is business. Each feature is impact to your EBITDA. Each feature is impact to your margin, right?
Right.
And so we created a company that simply allowed you to come to us and say, hey, we have this roadmap. We don't have enough people. Please help us develop it. Please help us engineer it, right? With
Yeah.
it came, yes, on one side, the help, being able to actually physically do something, but on the other side, the domain knowledge of doing it right and
Right.
scaling it. And we ran into that issue always with startups. Startups come in and say, hey, we got to do this. We can do this. How quickly can we do this? You can do it very quickly, but it doesn't mean that you won't be redoing it in 2 years at the time when you're starting to scale. So our premise was very simple. We're an engineering company. It's a service business. We provide X amount of services. They are AI-based services. AI transformation now is a key service where we look at a business and say, these in your operational flow are the pieces that will produce real KPI impact to your business that you should digitize or AI transform.
Right.
Before that, when we started, most of our business was in traditional engineering, mobile engineering, SaaS engineering, cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and of course, user experience, especially for early stage startups that
Yeah.
build features and want them to look cool.
Finally.
Finally, after 25 years in user experience, I see more and more CEOs and board members and very smart business people say, without sexy user experience, this isn't going to work.
Right.
Music
Right.
to my ears.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It only took 25 years, but yeah, no, we're here.
It only took 20. Hey, 25 years, it's a quarter of a century, in marketing terms.
It's unbelievable. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So as you look down, because I want to get into some of the use cases and some of your insights
Right.
on it, but as you look down the next 12 to 18 months, where do you see your biggest opportunities for within and helping companies and helping clients that you have?
I would say it is AI transformations. For businesses and enterprises and even SMBs and SMEs, it's definitely AI transformations. We already have a ton of stories and examples, but any business that has a operation, has revenues, has challenges, could be optimized using AI. Right? And could be done well. And so infusing AI into multiple stages, whether it's the front door, the marketing door, or it's the operations or supply chain or delivery, depending on complexity of the business, right? I think is the future.
I totally agree with you. So when you're talking to your clients, right, and talking to these companies, do they struggle in figuring out what use case has that impact? Like you gave me a couple of good examples before the podcast, which I think you probably want to hit on, but I find that CEOs and leaders are really struggling with that question of where do I start and what use case should I go at?
Yes, I think you're most likely right. I think AI craze created, or the last 2 years of AI has just created so much.
Craze was, yeah.
The hype is here, right? And most people respond to a hype by saying, "Oh my God, I need to be part of it," right? It's a FOMO, right? It's a fear
FOMO,
of missing
right.
out. I have to have it, but you can't logically approach it this way. You can't just say, "Oh, I must have it." You have to have a reason to have it, right? We find that startups must have it because they're building new technologies and investors are banking on those new technologies doing things in revolutionary ways.
Yeah.
And so now you're really focused as a startup to say, okay, well, what can I do differently that was done before? And there's a ton of examples I have. There's customers that are building innovative medical solutions, healthcare solutions, customers that are building innovative finance solutions, looking at, these are some real examples that I'll probably obscure a little bit for privacy reasons, but ultimately they're exactly what we're working on. There's almost every sector of business now is being revolutionized by AI, right? It's kind of obvious, right? And you can take something like SMB lending. We have companies we work with that are saying, hey, we're working on streamlining the lending process to SMEs and SMBs using AI. We can figure out creditworthiness better with AI. We can figure out fake applications. There's so many use cases in just that sector of lending, right?
Right.
Figuring out the garbage of lending, figuring out what's a good customer where you can, right? So there's that. Medical field is being completely re-envisioned as well, right? Not
Yeah,
necessarily
and way
traditional.
upstream, right? That's what I'm figuring out
Absolutely.
about medical. It's way upstream in the medical products and devices first before it's down at the hospital and the operational level.
Absolutely, yes, because it's less regulated, right? And so
Right.
more and more people with Dr. Google to begin with already seeking their own solutions, right? And
Yeah.
so AI is now aiding very complex spaces like Parkinson's disease and
Alzheimer's and yes.
Alzheimer's, blood tests, ability to get better data and predictive analytics on how to live a better life without
Yeah.
effectively relying on a doctor, right? What do you call it? The predictive analytics of
Yeah.
prevention, right?
Yes.
So we
Yes.
work a lot with customers like that, with startups that have something very innovative. I see a lot of micro ideas. Micro ideas is like there is a complicated space like Alzheimer's, and how do we create a better experience for an Alzheimer's patient
You're right.
using AI, right? And then there's a subset of tools and guiding. It could be as simple as here's what you need to know about your medication as you take it. Right. We all know,
Right.
like your doctor gives you a medication, you look at a bottle, you put the bottle somewhere, you start taking it, then something happens, you don't feel well, you don't really connect here that you need to look at the bottle and look at the side effects. And so there's a
Right.
lot of technology that people are providing now that aids it in real time. Right. There is many startups we work with that are involved in venture funding space, and there's a ton of AI being used now to just optimize your pitch,
Yeah.
optimize your startup pitch. I mean,
I've
that
had a few
whole,
podcast guests that talked
oh,
about that.
really?
Yeah. So that's amazing.
It is amazing. It used to take 2 weeks to build a basic deck and
Hmm.
communicate your ideas to VCs. Now it takes 20 minutes because all the data that used to take weeks to find,
Right.
ChatGPT finds you right away. And so you just got to smartly refine it, right?
You're
You
right.
can build a
Right.
deck in 20 minutes, right? Use cases, I think, are everywhere. And I think they're going to get more and more interesting in large enterprises too. Things that deal with nuclear power, things that deal with water supply. Something like what happened in LA recently with the Palisades fires and the Altadena
Right.
fires, right? There is a ton of solutions that people we're working with already building that will save that in the future, right? That will
Yeah.
prevent
That's
such things in the
amazing.
future.
Yeah.
And of course, the underneath engine for all of these pieces, the LLM, the large language model, right? In
Right.
which, so to some extent, the true power of AI, I think, unlocks when you start building those language models and predictive analytics in any of these spaces. Legal space, I think, is going to go through massive transformation.
I see
Immigration
that too.
space,
Yeah.
divorce lawyer space, the corporate law space, real estate space. Many of these are already examples of our real customers and customers we work with that are solving either micro problems with AI, such
Right.
things as how do I negotiate contracts more fairly in
Right.
big commercial space, to significantly larger problems, right?
Right. Like, the research, right? I've talked to a number of law firms about that, right? Is the research that's required, the paralegal work we were talking about. There's just tons of things. And so I was telling you about a client that we had that was looking at a bunch of their problem areas in their operations, and they had listed them all. And they had listed all the effort that it had taken, but they hadn't gone that last step, which is measuring that impact, right? And I feel like that's the biggest key in figuring out where to attack with AI in the right way. Are you seeing that with your clients as well?
I think so. We do. I think, in that sense, I think AI is not that different than building any successful business. I think you got to look at why you're doing what you're doing, right? And what
Yeah,
is the impact of that to begin with? And then with knowledge and understanding what AI can do for you to solve that problem, those solutions now become meaningfully better, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's crazy, Andy, because I was just thinking about another client that I have that just kind of helping them think through strategy. I was just operating within their ecosystem, right? And they're on Microsoft Teams and SharePoint and all this. And I'm watching them, and I'm like, well, can someone give me access to a document, right? Like I just wanted to do some background stuff.
Yeah.
And here they are searching, and it took them a couple days to get back to me because they couldn't find the document. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we have AI. to do simple things like this. You should be able to find that in 2 seconds, right? But
You
they're
can
still
build one in
operating.
seconds.
Yes. And they're still operating. So as much as I know that everyone wants AI and we're talking about this, there's still companies that are operating like it doesn't exist.
Yes, yes. And I mean, in technology world, there's always early adopters and laggers, right?
Right.
And I think, to be fair, some industries, especially healthcare and finance, the heavily regulated industries, will be always laggers to
Yeah.
adopt certain pieces,
Yes.
right? It's more complex. And startups will adopt AI much faster because for them it's critical. They won't be able to raise any money if they don't,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think enterprise space is likely going to go through massive efforts, just like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you would go through massive organizational efforts like let's implement agile. We don't work, our process is not the right process now. We work in a
Or the big
waterfall
quote
process.
back then, which digital transformation, right? I remember what
Yeah.
Adobe went through, right? And when it was
Yeah.
one of the biggest digital transformations ever, right? Yeah.
Digital transformation was massive business, massive
Right.
business.
Right.
And it still is to a certain extent. And the greater, the larger the company, the bigger the business, the greater the necessity for that digitization, right? For that
Right.
transformation.
Right.
I think now AI replaces the digitization, right?
Right.
And
That's what I
digital
say. We're moving from
transformation.
digital to AI transformation,
Or AI
correct?
transformation.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. It's accelerative too. Any technology, if you look at like the last 20 years of technology, it constantly accelerates as the innovation comes up. So I used to say back when I used to go to school, in order for me to write a paper or, a master's degree thesis, I would have to go to a physical library. Many people look at me now and say, what do you mean physical library? I mean, like the actual library. You go in and pull
Right.
the
Had
book
to pull the
out and you have to find
encyclopedias out,
something.
right? Yeah.
You have to find something inside the book, right?
Yeah. Right.
Back then, Google comes in and there's no such need anymore, right? You can just go
And now it's at your fingertips, right? Yeah.
and now it's at your fingertips, and now AI accelerated to mind-blowing speed, where you
Yes.
can throw any question out there and it will produce the answer. And so your time, human time, now is being massively saved. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
micro example of a real story that probably guys like us experience, right? You go to school, you got to go to a library to write something.
Right.
'Cause where else do you get this content? The internet is nascent, right?
Right.
Then internet comes up, you start searching, and well, you can get all those answers from the convenience of your
Yeah.
fingertips. And now today, it's like it's blazingly fast. It's
Yeah.
instant.
Yeah. And then between deep research and tools like Perplexity, you're like, man, I could get anything I want, right? Like in a microsecond.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
going to spoil this
Eventually,
younger generation for sure, right? As we were talking about. I mean, yeah.
yes, it will free them up to do a lot of other things. They'll
Yeah.
spend more and more time in a coffee shop.
Yeah. I totally agree. But yeah, well, it's funny, Andy. One of the things that, Mark Cuban said it first, right? A number of years ago about AI, but the creative mind, right? So the creative people are absolutely going to be key to putting AI and unlocking uses for it that no one's thinking of right now. And are you, because again, remember we were talking before is I put this thing out there that AI is not IT. And I think that a lot of CEOs, that they're waking up to that. Like, hey, this is not, I hand it to my CIO or CTO, right? Now, the implementation of some of the things that workflows and stuff, yeah, absolutely. You need companies like Within and partners, and you need your IT organization to help you empower that. But it's not nearly as difficult as building software, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, like even our business is being changed as we speak because the mechanics of our business is very simple. We have teams all over the world. We have some 500-600 people in multiple economies:
Right.
Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Romania, Poland. Fantastic engineers,
Fantastic
Colombia.
engineers. Yeah.
Fantastic engineers, right?
Yes.
Really just bright minds that think out of the box, right?
Yes.
We have teams in Argentina and Colombia that offer local time zones in fundamentally language, and
Yeah.
of course teams in India that are great at DevOps and tech ops. In this business now, 80-60% of the code could be written by effectively AI, right?
Yeah.
And so we are forced to build a digital engineer that lays down certain foundational frameworks, right?
Yeah.
and enables engineers to save time. Consequently, to a customer, we can offer significantly better prices and increase our own margins, right?
Yeah.
Which is a win-win for everybody.
Right. It's a
win-win
win-win.
for everybody.
That's the cool part. What you just laid out is what every founder and CEO should be like hearing, right? Is that when done right, it becomes a win-win for your partners, right? For your team and for your customers, right? Because your margins get better, but you're being more efficient and it can all go, kind of full circle. So I think that's a story, Andy, that you can lead within and start to help educate founders and CEOs, right? Because they're all struggling with this challenge. I talk to them every day and I know that they're, I know I need to do this. I don't know where to start, right? And some of the things you're laying out is exactly the kind of stories they need to hear of, how to do that. How do you coach your clients in on that? Or do they come in with a preconceived idea?
I mean, we have all kinds of clients. We have customers that come in and they come in with a problem. They say, this is my problem, help us solve it. Classic example,
Right.
we have a legal business we're working with and they come in and they say, we have a problem of operations. Our operations cost too much. Here's our operations. We look at the operation flow and we see pieces that could be transformed using AI, and micro innovation and macro innovation could be applied to it, and they instantly see success. What's cool is that maybe it takes a month, maybe 2 months to develop these features, right? But once they're developed, they start bringing results right away, right? They start saving time. And so if you look at it backwards, to implement, in my opinion, to implement AI successfully anywhere, whether it's a startup or a massive banking business along the lines of, banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America, or technology companies like IBM that support them, you really have to understand what is the value of what I do to us, the business, and to our customers. And when you see that value and you see how that value is delivered, that's where AI excels.
I couldn't agree more.
But that is a leadership question, and it's a creativity question. Somebody years ago asked me, like, what do you see user experience evolve? No one really understands it now. That was like 10 years ago. So it's going to evolve into leadership, because the creativity of being able to create a user experience leads to people wanting to use a user experience, right? And consequently, you get, as a business, rewarded by the market share, right? People want to use something because they see value in it, right? There's thousands, if not millions, of examples of how great businesses, grassroots businesses like McDonald's, Starbucks, whatnot, found value in simply being in the right place at the right time with the right product. Right. And so now AI is going to blow that field massively into this just kaleidoscope open of opportunities. But to build the right opportunities, it still has to come from leaders, from founders, from CEOs, from C that looks at it and says, why are we doing this? We're not just slapping AI on top of our operations, or we're replacing it. We want to achieve big results for customers. And that starts with understanding value. What is the value to people? How are you giving them better experience, better lives, more savings? I mean, value could be anything, right? Yeah, and you kind of hit on, right, when we were talking before about the two types of AI that you see, right, which were you kind of want to extrapolate on those, right, the Band-Aid versus the absolutely deep, impactful AI. Well, I mean, I think the term Band-Aid AI comes from the FOMO, right? Everybody now knows that without AI, you're no one. And so if you're a smart executive, you look at it and say, oh shit, if I add AI to my company, I can 4x my valuation, but your multiple or whatever, right? But exactly. I always look at that, Andy, right? That Band-Aid one is that's when product. I've seen a bunch of platforms just bolted on, right? Oh, we have AI, right? That's when Google first started with Gemini. That's kind of what it was, and I'm like, it just doesn't move the needle. When they start to create now, like their AI agents, and now there's platforms that they're rolling out, you're like, okay, now this is different. Right. So that's a simple example, but I would imagine that's kind of what you're hitting on. I think a good example of deep AI, and I'll give an example of like enterprise space, is companies finding a really big innovative idea in banking space, more transparency, more visibility, more understanding of what a banking family is leads consequently to understanding what is the true financial power and potential of those companies, individuals, depending on targeting SMB space or individual space, right? And then looking at your organization, how that organization works today. There's these slices of operations that go through it, and
Yeah.
then apply AI in a smart way to make sure that you have both meaningful impact to your business and margin, meaningful business impact first to your customer through value, right? What it really comes down, what value do I bring to my customer? Right? I think in the age of AI, a smart C-suite or smart founders have to look at it almost kind of fundamentally as a business builds something, does something, provides some product, service, or technology.
Right.
And that technology competes with a multitude of other technologies on the market for what? For sales, for customers, right?
Right. For
Those
customers. Right.
customers reward you with market share in exchange for the value you bring. And that value speaks for itself. The market share speaks for the value, right?
Right. Right. And if someone creates different value, better value using a better solution, then you're going to lose that market share, right? So that's exactly kind of where we're at, I think, with leaders and founders and CEOs and having to figure out and take a hard look at their business and figure out where AI can really innovate and change their value.
Yeah, I think the next several years, probably next 12 to 18 months, is really going to be on one side, yes, about technology, evolving AI, how to implement it, but also about your creativity and how deep you really understand your business and how deep you understand your customers. The more you understand them, the more likely you will apply the AI in the right places and get meaningful business results, right? But
100%.
slapping it on, yes, there's like any sliver of business could be somehow impacted by AI, right?
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it, right?
Right.
That would be probably a band-aid AI, right?
Yes. Yes.
And we see a lot of that too. Examples that are like, hey, we're a startup. We have a good idea. We have basic operations. We have good business plan, operations plan. We have a good traction from investors, but investors are telling us we need AI and we don't know where to apply it.
Yeah. 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 No, I totally agree. Yeah. Andy, I love your approach. I love the fact that you kind of, so we're doing coming up later in May, like we're doing a virtual workshop with an AI consulting company that's been doing AI for 20 years, right? And just to educate the market on some of the things you just kind of highlighted, right? Is how to think about it. And he has got the four pillars, but I love the fact that you just kind of broke it down even simpler, which is basically Band-Aid bolt-on AI versus really reimagining your value, right, with AI. And I think that second piece is what a lot of founders and CEOs are not thinking deep enough about, because that's where you can, because I think that's what startups are doing. They're taking a look at other people's businesses, some of them, and saying, hey, I can do this way leaner, way cheaper. I can do it and take market share, right? So you have to figure out where your moat is going to do to protect your business. And I think that second piece that you just laid out is the most important thing they can be thinking of.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to enterprises. Enterprises have a lot of built-in technology, legacy way of doing things, things that are working. Anytime you have something like this, that means somebody in the company is protecting that business.
Yeah.
And that creates, to a certain extent, an amount of conflict of building a new business and new technologies. Startups don't have that challenge. Startups can reimagine the world instantly and say, I see business X, they're doing things in a way that's not quite modern and not quite right, and I have a better way of doing it. And that's probably enough to apply AI to that, because that micro innovation tends to be very successful.
Yeah, and very impactful, right? And customers like
very
it.
Impactful.
But what's crazy is that because of AI and the streamlining of available possibilities, is that they could do it so much faster. And usually, if you're an enterprise company, you were never worried about that before. This has changed the game in that aspect, I think. And to your point, I do think in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see how viable that really is, because we're going to see a lot of people going and trying to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. And with that, hopefully you will see some compression in the market.
Yeah.
Of smart AI versus just AI noise.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I'm going to steal that AI noise. I love that. Well, hey, listen, I have one more question for you. But believe me, Andy, I could spend hours talking to you. You and I are very kind of like-minded in a lot of this stuff.
It sounds like we have a good conversation going. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could, right, and this is kind of what we pull insights out of the podcast, and you've given so many industry insights already, but if you could fix one thing in your business with AI, what would you think that biggest thing would be?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I think if I'm very genuinely authentic and honest, I would have to say that in our business, we have to fix lead gen and we have to fix our customer onboarding, right? As in, is this the right customer, and how we get customers through the doors? Because you see, in our business, the reality is that no matter how big or small of a customer you are, we're going to spend equal amount of time with you. It's just what our business does. It's we work in engineering field, and to a certain extent, engineering field dictates that, right?
Yeah.
And so
Agreed.
ethically, I can't say that, hey, one customer is spending 200K and the other one 2 million. Doesn't matter. Our teams will have to spend exactly the same time on that,
on both
executive account management leadership process, making sure the customer is taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously that introduces a big challenge. Which customers do we take? How?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Sales is a very tough thing in our business. Sales cycles are very long, especially in enterprise business. This market is very saturated. Saturation, I think, could be addressed to the point of earlier questions with creativity and smart tools and maybe pricing and whatever you call it, white glove service and many other things that customers would feel like is adding a lot of value, right? But streamlining that sales onboarding process and leads and qualified leads and leads that really connect us to the right customer, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the criteria for the customer is, I think is our biggest challenge.
Got it.
Our second challenge is our second challenge is probably optimizing our operations. Optimizing operations using AI, because again, in a traditional model that many companies, many good competitors of ours have probably the same style operations. We have talent all over the world. Talent is good, but now there's AI, and the talent could be better with AI. Match even something as micro innovative as matching a customer to the individuals in the company
that have the
have the right know-how, that have the right skill, right, is something already of value, right?
Yeah.
So those are our challenges.
I love that. And the second, look, I think every company that I talk to, almost every company has both of those problems. And to your point about figuring out who you best serve, right, is always a challenge. But that operation piece, I think, is one that almost everybody I talk to knows they have and that knows they can be better, right? And it's the whole thing. You think about the legal thing that you talked about, but many of your use cases where you're helping your companies to do that is to fix their, one of their biggest operational drags. And I think part of it, Andy, is you just telling your story because your company is really well equipped, especially where you have talent all over the globe, of being able to maximize the talent in those areas and helping customers. Because like you said, the engineers in Eastern Europe are amazing, right? And helping people with time zone issues in South America. Like, this is a business model that I'm very, very familiar with, but I love the way you laid that out. And using AI to match the right people in the company with the client and their needs is a brilliant idea. And I think that that's kind of the showcases how good companies are thinking through how to provide more value. So I kudos to you.
And what's really interesting is it's perfectly synced to the venture side of our business, right? When we talk, obviously I talk a lot to M&As and VCs, that oftentimes conversations are how can we help you grow? How can we help you exit, whatnot?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when smart VCs and entrepreneurs, M&As look at the business like this, they look at it from perspective of, have you systematized sales and have you systematized operations to deliver on sales?
Yeah.
Everything else, I think, could be fixed. Even when I work with M&As and VCs, they actually look at exactly the same outcomes. They say, how well is in order for us to help you, in order for us to find you money or have you exit or whatnot, the goal is, have you systematized your sales and how well is that working with operations, right? Everything else could be fixed.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, like I said, I could talk to you for hours about this. I just love this stuff. I love the way you're thinking through this. So, I I would love to check back in with you in a few months, because I just think that this is moving really fast, and your perspective and what you're seeing on the ground is really, really going to be valuable. And we don't have enough great voices in this to share out. And yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Andy, I'm going to kind of check back in with you in about 90 days. We'll stay communicating. And like I said, I know you have some podcasts coming up as well, which I think is great. And hopefully some of my audience will move over and watch that too. But thank you for spending time with us today, for sharing your insights. Can't thank you enough. Within is just a really, really cool company. And I think that there's lots of people that watch this, they're going to want to talk to you. So I'm hoping that happens.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be on your podcast. And of course, let's stay in touch, and we'll keep doing fun things together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And guys, we will keep everybody informed, and we'll start to talk about the upcoming virtual workshop. And Andy, I could see us doing some stuff with you as well on that. So thank you guys. And thank you, Andy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brad. Glad to be here.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.